it's me. It's a girl in her Bible, and this is episode where we finish Jeremiah. Woo! Um, and to be honest, some of it, or quite a bit of it, actually, I don't really understand. But it's got prophecies against the nations that hurt Israel, and it explains about the captivity of Babylon a little bit, and it's got some interesting things. So I think we're gonna like it. But let's get started. And for chapter 46, my subtitle, it has prophecies against nations, and it says prophecies against Egypt. And then there's a reassurance for Israel. Then 47 is prophecies against the Philistines. 48 is prophecies against Moab, which has some very interesting things that I wasn't quite sure of. 49 is the prophecies against Ammon. Then prophecies against Edom. And then prophecies against Damascus. Prophecies against Kedar and Hazor, then prophecies against Elam, and 50, you have prophecies against Babylon, and then at the end of 50, the return of God's people, then the invasion of Babylon, the humiliation of Babylon, the desolation of Babylon, the conquest of Babylon, God's judgment on Babylon, and in 52, it talks about the fall of Jerusalem. So this is one of those sections, I think, where when I read it in some research that Jeremiah does not necessarily go chronologically. I'm not sure if he does here. Some of this may be prophetic, like end times, but it could also be like this time. Some of it is right here during this time as well. So there's a whole lot to this section, and I am learning as I go, and so some of it I'm not quite sure of. But 46, verse 10 states to me, it's just who God is, but it says that day belongs to the Lord, the God of armies, a day of vengeance, to avenge himself against his adversaries. And this is just to remind us that God takes vengeance. We don't have to. He fights our battles. Unless he tells us to do something, he is going to take care of them. So that verse reminded me of that. And then it's the king of Babylon is coming. Verse 18, the king of Babylon will come like Tabor among the mountains. Verse 27 is reassurance for Israel. And in the midst of this book, it says, "But you, my servant Jacob, do not be afraid and do not be discouraged, Israel, for without fail I will save you from far away. And your descendants from the land of their captivity, Jacob will return and have calm and quiet, with no one to frighten him. And you, my servant Jacob, do not be afraid. This is the Lord's declaration, for I will be with you. I will bring destruction on all the nations where I have banished you, but I will not bring destruction on you. I will discipline you with justice, and I will by no means leave you unpunished." So you've got this passage that's saying, don't be afraid. I'm going to take vengeance on people. However, I am still going to give you consequences for your actions. And a lot of that deals with the idol worship and the disobedience of God's people during this time. And so he's like, I'm not going to leave you unpunished, but I promise you that I will go gather you. For chapter 47, indeed, the Lord is about to destroy the Philistines. That's in verse 4. And verse 6, it says, "O sword of the Lord, how long will you be restless? Go back to your sheath. Be still, be silent." That's a very powerful picture of the sword of the Lord taking vengeance among people that he has justified to be wrong. The prophecies against Moab, I just wrote, and especially verses 14 through 20, that I just really don't understand. This would be a chapter I would need to dig into a little bit more, I've put a mark on. After I read through the Bible, I will come back and I'm going to dig into some certain parts because I want to understand. So this would be one of those sections. Verse 47, I had a question because he's talking about all of this destruction of Moab. And then it says there in 31, it says, "Therefore I will wail over Moab. I will cry out for Moab, all of it." And then in 47, he says, "Yet I will restore the fortunes of Moab in the last days. This is the Lord's declaration." And I wrote, why? If Moab was so bad, why would he restore it in the last days? And I had another question, what is modern day Moab? So I looked it up, and modern day Moab, according to what I found, is central western Jordan, and like today. So I just wonder, I didn't do further research, like, are they, wealthy? Are they doing well? But I just had that curious question about that. And chapter 49, verse 11, I said, why does the Lord keep saying he will restore these things? He says, abandon your fathers, I will preserve them. Let your widows trust in me. And again, you've got that restoration for a different country. I just didn't know. And I also made a note. I wonder if these places or areas are groups of future destruction, like in the end times, or does he mean right now? Because there's so much of that in these passages. 49 is quite long, and it talks about different things. 25 says, how can the city of praise not be abandoned, the town that brings me joy? Talking about, this is in the Damascus section. And verse 33 says, Hazor will become a jackal's den, a desolation forever. No one will live there. No human being will stay in it, even temporarily. I did not look that one up, but I did make a question of, I wonder if people live there today. And it'd just be interesting to find out. And chapter 50 starts the prophecies against Babylon. And I made several notes. One in verse 4 and 5. In those days and at that time, this is the Lord's declaration, the Israelites and Judeans will come together, weeping as they come, and will seek the Lord their God. They will ask about Zion, turning their faces to this road. They will come in and join themselves to the Lord in a permanent covenant that will never be forgotten. I wondered if that is the covenant of Christ. And in verse 6, it says, my people were lost sheep. Their shepherds led them astray, guiding them in the wrong way in the mountains. And I made a note. I feel like this is us in many ways. We have so many people that are guiding the Lord's people in wrong directions. Oh, God, hear us. I think so many different times there's so many, I don't want to say false doctrines, but at times, there are. And how many people of the Lord are being pulled in different directions and being led astray by shepherds that aren't really doing right or have right intentions, or just misguided intentions. So I just made that note. And that's chapter 50. Verse 20 and 50 says, for I will forgive those I leave as a remnant. And again, you have that remnant of Israel that's left. Verse 34, this is beautiful to me. Their Redeemer is strong. The Lord of armies is his name. He will fervently champion their cause so that he might bring rest to the earth, but turmoil to those who live in Babylon. Not that being beautiful, but the part about he will fervently champion their cause. How awesome is it that we have a God that champions our cause? 51 talks about God's judgment on Babylon. Lots of things that are said here. I made a note, and this, I'm not questioning the Lord at all, but I just wondered how the Lord used Babylon for his purpose and then destroys her for what she's done. But as you read through it, my question was kind of answered, because Babylon didn't give credit to the Lord, and they did it for selfish reasons. And also, if you're looking into verse 34, Babylon did horrible things that maybe the Lord didn't intend. That was a question I had. Maybe they did things that he wished they wouldn't have done. But again, in 36, he says, I am about to champion your cause and take vengeance on your behalf. And you see that beautiful power of God there. In 45, it says, come out from among her, my people. Save your lives, each of you, from the Lord's burning anger. May you not become cowardly and fearful. He's rescuing you there. And then I had a question at the end of 51, because he writes this stuff on a scroll. It says that he's writing this. Jeremiah wrote on one scroll all the disaster that would come to Babylon. All these words were written against Babylon. Jeremiah told Sariah, when you get to Babylon, see that you read all these words aloud. Say, the Lord, you have threatened to cut off this place so that no one will live in it, people or animals. Indeed, it will remain desolate forever. He tells him, when you have finished reading the scroll, tie a stone to it and throw it into the middle of the Euphrates River. Then say, in the same way, Babylon will sink and never rise again because of the disaster I am bringing on her. They will grow weary. The words of Jeremiah end here. I just made a note. I wonder if it's still there. I mean, I know they probably decompose, but and just in the middle of the Euphrates River, if that stone is still there. I thought that was a neat thought. In 52, the end of Jeremiah, it talks about the fall of Jerusalem. It says Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hamutal, daughter of Jeremiah. She was from Libnah. And I wrote, is this the same Jeremiah that we're reading has written different things? It said Zedekiah did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as Jehoiakim had done. So this whole chapter is about what happened. And in verse 10 and 11, you hear about Zedekiah's sons being slaughtered. And the king of Babylon brought Zedekiah to Babylon, where he kept him in custody until his dying day. He burned the Lord's temple, the king's palace, and all the houses of Jerusalem. He burned down all of them, all the great houses. Then King Zedekiah died in custody at the end, the king of Babylon. That's part of it. At the very end, it says that altogether 4,600 people were deported. And King Jehoiakim was actually released from prison, and he was the king of Judah, I believe, if I'm reading all of this right. Judah's king Jehoiakim, yes. He was released from prison and placed above other kings of Babylon and allowed freedom and a place of honor with, this name is interesting, King Evil Merodach of Babylon. I thought, ooh, who would want to be King Evil? But that's his name. And so for the rest of his life, he was in a place of honor in the presence of the king of Babylon. So then you have the end of Jeremiah, and we are done with that. So I thought that was, there's a lot of meat in there in Jeremiah to read, a lot to learn and still learn. Just because we've read it once doesn't mean we're done learning. It's a living word of God. So every time you read it, something new is going to be, something new pops out in my heart and mind. So I hope you've enjoyed reading Jeremiah and on to the book of Lamentations and Ezekiel. And we will keep pushing through. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.